Continuing from the last time, I made this video because I wanted my family to know a little more about near-death experiences. But of course, I want as many people as possible around the world to listen to it. I don't think anyone in my family would deny the world seen by near-death experiences, saying that it is nothing more than a hallucination seen by a confused brain. However, some of them may be skeptical. In this video, I would like to list 5 evidences that the world seen by near-death experiences is more than just hallucination. Evidence number 1. People with near-death experiences often emerge from their bodies at some point and see events around them that were not supposed to see. And it is often reported that the contents of the report are exactly the same as the facts. Medically speaking, they are supposed to be in a state of unconsciousness, but they accurately describe the resuscitation measures performed on them afterwards, often surprising doctors. Sabon, an American cardiologist who believed that out-of-body experiences were impossible, waited for a patient to appear who claimed to have seen himself being resuscitated from a valve. He believed that his experience and knowledge as an expert would quickly reveal the questionability of the patient's testimony. In fact, he interviewed patients who claimed to have had out-of-body experiences. As a result, he was forced to admit that, even from his perspective as a medical specialist, they accurately described in detail the resuscitation measures performed on them while being supposedly unconscious. Finally, he decided to publish the result of his research from the standpoint of recognizing that out-of-body experiences can actually occur. His research was statistically solid. He asked NDE survivors who had actually experienced CPR and heart disease patients who had not had an NDE, namely a comparison group, to describe the resuscitation process and compare the two. Over the course of 5 years, he interviewed 32 patients who claimed to have seen themselves resuscitated while at the brink of death. The results were completely contrary to his expectations. It turns out that what the patients said they saw from a valve basically matched to the description in the medical records, and it could not be said to an irresponsible depiction based on vague prior knowledge, much less a hallucination. The explanations given by patients in the comparison control group were either very limited, or even if they were a bit detailed, about 80% of them had major errors in their descriptions, but the explanations given by NDEs were often detailed, and there were almost no mistakes. What is interesting about Sabon's research is that the scientist, who was initially skeptical, made full use of his knowledge as a cardiologist to carry out thorough research and analysis, and finally recognized the reality of out-of-body experiences. This was the conclusion he came to after pouring his pride as a cardiologist, his rigorous scientific attitude, and his abilities into investigating this phenomenon. Let me give just 2 more specific examples. An American woman named Maria was rushed to a Seattle hospital's emergency center with a heart attack. 3 days later, she went into cardiac arrest and had to be resuscitated. Meanwhile, she had moved out of her body and was watching from the ceiling. What she said after she recovered was consistent with what the social worker who was present saw. Maria also described what she saw outside the hospital, where she noticed only one blue tennis shoe scuffed around the little finger, visible in the window ledge. She then asked the social worker to confirm it. The social worker went through the rooms on the 3rd floor one by one and found a tennis shoe just like Maria had described outside the window of one room. It was in a position that could not be seen when looking up from below. Another patient suffered cardiopulmonary arrest during surgery, and resuscitation measures were hurriedly performed. The patient's dentures were removed and stored in a drawer on a shelf in the operating room because they would interfere with passing the tube through the mouth. When the patient regained consciousness after the surgery, he surprisingly knew where his dentures had been stored. Moreover, the day after the surgery, a nurse came into his hospital room and he said, "You are the one who put my dentures in the drawer, aren't you?" which surprised the nurse. This was the patient's first encounter with the nurse. Evidence number 2. There are many reports of near-death experiences by blind people, and they often report being able to see during their out-of-body experiences. Generally speaking, when you are out of your body, you see something not through an organ called your eyes. If that's the case, it's entirely possible that blind people will see something during an out-of-body experience. There were multiple reports of visual experiences during their near-death experiences, including graphic reports of seeing surrounding reality during out-of-body experiences. And the contents of these reports has been confirmed to be true to some extent. An American woman lost her eyesight due to a botched surgery, which was revealed in the recovery room after the surgery. She was to be taken on a stretcher to a separate room for examination, but her carrier panicked and crashed the stretcher into the elevator door. At that moment, she disembodied and floated above her. She then saw her family and acquaintances standing further down the hallway. Medical records confirm that she was completely blind at that point, and her face was covered with a mask. However, the specific circumstances, including who the people she saw and where they were standing, were confirmed by witnesses. Evidence number 3. Near-death experiences occur under general anesthesia with no consciousness of any kind. General anesthesia involves the entire body, including the brain, so there should be no consciousness, but patients who undergo surgery under anesthesia may have near-death experiences. There have been many reports of patients experiencing near-death experiences while being controlled by anesthetists using various monitors. There are many cases of near-death experiences, including cardiac arrest under general anesthesia. In that case, a clear and coherent experience like a near-death experience, including out-of-body experience, would be impossible for not just one, but two reasons. The fact that near-death experiences accompanied by vivid consciousness are reported under such conditions provides strong evidence for the existence of consciousness that does not depend on the brain. Evidence number 4. The near-death experiences of young children and those of adults are surprisingly similar. This fact strongly suggests that the content of the near-death experience was not influenced by knowledge acquired in adulthood or religious beliefs. An American researcher named Long scrutinized the near-death experiences reported through a website survey. He then asked 33 questions to 26 people who were under 5 years old at the time of experience, and 585 people who were over 6 years old, and compared the answers between the two groups. The results showed that the experiences of both groups were basically the same. Children under the age of 5 have little or no knowledge of common sense or near-death experiences that society would teach them. This suggests that the content of near-death experiences, which are common to children, is independent of cultural influences, beliefs, and life experiences that adults might have. Hallucinations, on the other hand, are susceptible to such effects. Evidence number 5. As I touched on in the previous video, people who had near-death experiences undergo many psychological changes after that, many of which last a lifetime. People with near-death experiences have a strong tendency to stop fearing death, and they also come to believe in life after death. Additionally, they become more loving and considerate of people and creatures around them, becoming less concerned with material gain and status. It clearly means psychological growth, and it is difficult to imagine that the hallucinations seen by a dying and confused brain would bring about such changes and growth. Some of NDEs are reported to experience dramatic spiritual growth, which can be called Satori or enlightenment in Zen Buddhism. Mere hallucinations do not have the power to make humans grow psychologically and spiritually to such an extent. How do you feel after listening to the above? I have only been able to briefly introduce the 5 pieces of evidence here, but in reality, they have been examined and discussed in detail thousands of times more than what I have described here. For example, there is a book that examines the testimonies of blind near-death experiencers. Judging from all of this, it is clear that near-death experiences are proof there is a life after death. As a result of many years of research, I have come to believe this. The conviction had a great impact on my own way of life. I was able to gain courage, peace of mind, and a positive attitude in life. I made this video with a strong desire to help my family learn something from near-death experiences. Of course, I wish the same for as many people as possible around the world.